Hello, Internet. It is I, Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Predictions. Today, we're going to be talking about Turning Red. So, as usual, we're going to be going over the pros and cons. So, let's get to it. Pros. So, this is a Pixar movie. And as you know, Pixar has a very long, prestigious legacy for the most part. But their legacy is, you know, truly something. I mean, from Toy Story to Toy Story 3, they had an unprecedented streak of acclaim. As long as you ignore the first Cars movie, which really isn't that bad, but it's nowhere near top tier for Pixar. But ignoring Cars, Toy Story, Bugs Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, Incredibles, Ratatouille, Wally, Up, Toy Story 3, all bangers. Bangers and then some. Like, Pixar was like the top of the mountain when it came to animation. After that, things got a lot more uneven. You had Cars 2, which was their first critical dud, even though it still made money. Brave and Monsters University were seen as okay, fine. Inside Out was considered to be a banger. Good Dinosaur was also meh, like not terrible, but not great. And it was their first flop, the first box office flop, so that's not good. Finding Dory, huge hit, but it was just kind of a good, not great sequel. Same applies to Incredibles 2 and Toy Story 4, despite both movies making over $1 billion. Incredibles 2 being Pixar's most successful movie of all time, mainly because it had 14 years of hype fueling it. And Coco was also a banger, and it was also a huge hit. Cars 3 didn't do that good, but granted, it wasn't really about box office. It's about those merchandising, selling those toys. That's what makes Cars as big as it is. But after Toy Story 4, things took a really bad turn for Pixar. Onward came out at literally the worst time imaginable. And it's not even a joke because literally the weekend after it came out, everything like COVID just hit the States so hard. Everything changed in an instant. And movie theaters were basically obsolete for like the next year or so. I mean, they were still around, but not really. They wouldn't come back to life until like mid 2021. But yeah, Onward was screwed very hard because of COVID. So I'm not going to be too harsh towards that. But then, as you know, Soul, Luca, Turning Red, all movies that were supposed to be theatrical were dumped on Disney Plus to give the Disney Plus some content, to boost those subscriber numbers and shit. And yeah, obviously theaters weren't too thrilled about that. And yeah, and when Lightyear came out, it had like several issues to deal with. One, it was a spinoff no one really needed. Two, you don't have Tim Allen, you have you have Chris Evans as Buzz Lightyear, and that turned some people off. Not having Tim Allen be Buzz. Then there's also the fact that because of all these Disney Plus releases, the audience was kind of conditioned to just wait until it hits Disney Plus. So that's obviously a huge problem for like a movie's theatrical run. And then there's a little controversy about Lightyear and like the gay kiss. I don't want to think about it again. It was so worthless. It was such honestly a controversy in the grand scheme of things, but people still talked about it. And Lightyear was an absolute disaster financially. It did horrendous to the point where the director of Lightyear was basically fired from Pixar. He was let go. So that's a big yikes. And then Elemental last year was looking like the same, looking like an epic disaster, but it was able to find an audience. It was able to have some legs. It did really well overseas, especially in South Korea. And because of that, it was able to just barely avoid bomb territory by making almost 500 million, but still, that's nowhere near Pixar's best. And reception wise, it was also nowhere near Pixar's best. It's not their worst, but it's not their best. And so here we are with Pixar. So Pixar, it's kind of more of a pro and a con. Like everything prior to Cars 2 is a pro easily, but after that, it's way more spotty, and then it becomes more of a con. So it's kind of more a middle. It's not really most of a pro. It's more of a middle ground thing with Pixar at this point. So yeah, that's a middle ground with Pixar's legacy. So it's neither a pro or a con. It's middle ground. Now, for an actual pro, I mean, this movie had high scores from critics, like 95%. That's obviously really good. Its audience score is definitely not that. It's quite a bit lower, which I'll explain why that is later. But I gotta look at the critic score, and 95%, that's a pro in my book. So, yeah. Another pro, I guess, is that family movies, there's just nothing out there unless you want to see Migration, but I don't think anyone really wants to watch that. I feel like you're better off just waiting until Kung Fu Panda 4 comes out, honestly. But yeah, so there's no like real family movies out there besides Migration, and I guess Wonka too. But those are like old as hell. They're like 2 months old at this point. Like people want something like fresh. Well, this really isn't fresh because it was on Disney Plus, but something fresh in theaters. There we go. Something fresh in theaters. People might just want that. So, yeah, I guess I'm labeling that as a pro, lack of direct competition. And I think that's it. Okay, cons. So this movie has a pretty controversial reputation. I remember like all the discourse surrounding this movie 2 years ago. About stuff in the movie because the movie's about like puberty, and some people were like didn't like how it was portrayed, thought it was uncomfortable, it just felt kind of wrong. Things I've never seen the movie, so I can't say what exactly happens, but I know about like all the controversy the surrounding this movie. And I also remember, well, it didn't have, it was less to do with the movie and more to do like a review of the movie. You probably remember this. You probably seen like these memes floating around with Turning Red, like 9/11 memes. Okay, you probably seen them floating around. That was because of a review from a YouTuber that I'm embarrassed that I used to watch back then. Mysterious Mr. Enter. He made a review of it, and like in one part of his review, he like made like this weird mention that because the movie took place like what 2002, I believe that's when like the movie takes place, and there was like no mention of like the 9/11 terrorist attacks. I'm just like, what the hell does that have to do with anything? Like it was such out of like left field, and people dunked on him real hard for saying that, and it became this big meme 2 years ago. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up just for nostalgia's sake. And just because it's connected to Turning Red. But yeah, this movie's reputation is not the greatest in the world, so I'm gonna label that as a con. Another con is that, as you know, Soul was released in theaters last month on Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. I wasn't expecting much out of that, but damn, even my low expectations weren't low enough apparently. Because that movie didn't even hit like 1 million in its opening weekend. It didn't even hit 500,000. Like it was hella embarrassing. You just look at it and just like, why even release this at all? Like this was pointless. And I guess the same problem with Soul is that anyone who wanted to see Turning Red has probably already seen it on Disney Plus. So there's no real benefit watching it in the theater unless you really want to see it on a big screen. But yeah. Yeah, anyone who's wanted to see this movie has probably already seen it. So that's a con, definitely. And the fact that the Soul release was an absolute disaster, that doesn't help either. That just paints a very bleak picture for not just this, but for Luca next month. So yeah, that's a con. And another con is that Super Bowl is this weekend. Obviously, Super Bowl is bad for all movies because everyone's going to be focused on the big game and the halftime show and commercials and shit. That's what everyone's going to be focused on. Nobody is focused on the movies. Nobody. So, yeah, that's a con, obviously. And I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. So, opening weekend, judging by what happened with Soul, I'm going to say under 500K. I'm just going to say that under 500K opening weekend, and it's total less than 1 million. I'm just going to have the same range as Soul because, why not? I feel like that'd be for the best. And yeah, so that's it for the weekend. Woo. Now next weekend will be very interesting because I won't be doing it on the weekend. No, I'm going to be making my prediction videos on Wednesday because Wednesday is Valentine's Day. And we got 2 movies opening on Valentine's Day. We got Bob Marley, One Love, and we got probably a movie that is I'm very excited to see for all the wrong reasons, and that's Madam Web. So I get to talk about those 2 movies next Wednesday. Okay? So stay tuned for those movies. And yeah, so that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn on notifications, share the whole drill. We'll check out more videos like this. Got playlists on the homepage, all previous prediction videos I made this year. You want to watch any of them from any of the ones I've done this year, the past few years. You want to watch any of them from beginning to now? Any of them on the channel. You want to watch it? Go right ahead. There's also the canceled series where I go over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. I've talked about Turning Red 3 times. The first time was episode 101. That's when it got the Disney Plus treatment. That's when it was booted over there. And as I said in my title, another Pixar movie bites the dust. So, which is exactly what happened. So, yeah, that was the first time. The second time was episode 111, where I talked about it alongside movies like The Batman, Morbius, Sonic 2, and, what else? The Lost City. This was like during, like, obviously the Russia's, when like the invasion of Ukraine like really started, like in early 2022, it caused like a big, just a whole lot of shit going down, a lot of horrible shit going on down in Ukraine, and because of that, Hollywood, like a lot of their movies, it just said we're not going to release in Russia, they're not going to play in Russia, and a bunch of movies just pulled their releases from there, and that's when I talked about it, the second time, because I thought it was important to talk about because it was a very serious situation. And I thought I would want to bring it up, at least for one video. But that's not all. Last time I talked about this was episode 220, where that's when Soul, Luca, and Turning Red got their 2024 dates. And I talked about those alongside Thanksgiving 2 and Nosferatu. So that was the third time I talked about it. So if you want to watch any of those cancel episodes, you want to watch any of the ones I've done recently, I did like 3 this week. 231, 232, 233. You want to watch any of them from beginning to now, you want to binge them all from beginning to now, I highly encourage you to do that, so go do it. There's also box office recaps where I go over the box office results for any particular month. I just did my January recap very recently. February recap won't happen until the first week of March, so stay tuned for that. But if you want to watch any of the past recap videos I made on the channel, you can go right ahead. And yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.